probably why she wouldn't sleep last night.
I know. I really think it was. She was like trying to play last night. She was doing like, there she is, and talking.
It's
and
those nights where you're just like,
she was being so cute.
Stop it!
Stop being cute.
Stop being cute! Welcome to our home. We are not professional, talking ahead of the.
Sorry.
Yes, you spit. Anyways, and I'm sick, and so this is what we do during the breaks. I don't know if you were aware.
I'm not doing that.
Oh, I'm honking. I'm honking and blowing the horn of Zion every time we take a break. So just imagine that in your head. But I've got my trusty dusty tissues out because I've been sick for the last couple of days here. But we're here. We are doing another podcast. I'm excited about this one.
Me too.
I'm really excited because this last week we got our first real date in a long time.
I know. It's been a long time.
Yeah. On Tuesday, we were able to have a friend come over, watch all of the kids, and we left them all for several hours and was able to go to a nice dinner. And we have not done that.
It was really good.
In a long time.
Yeah.
It just brought back good memories of when we were in Texas, and
Jen,
we had
we
wonderful.
love you, Jen.
If you're listening, Jen, we do still think about you, and to this day, we're always whenever we need a date, we're if only we had a Jen.
Only we had a Jen.
But it did. That was a really happy time in our life when we were able to just do dates consistently. And we've had a season since moving to Kansas City. We didn't know a whole lot of people, and our kids, and more importantly, our kids didn't know.
We do date nights at home. We spend time together in the evenings. And so it's not like we had a lack of being together, but being able to go and do something special and out
and
is
uninterrupted.
Nice.
I think that's the biggest deal. So the other day we went downstairs and I brought Chipotle in, and we were like, okay, we're going to try to do a date over lunch, and we're going to try to keep the kids upstairs, have their brothers, make sure they have everything that they need. And we had, 3 or 4 times one of the kids came down.
It wasn't quite that many, but it was it was two or three.
It's just, it's hard to get uninterrupted time together. And so this Tuesday was really great. Really great time.
I told him it takes me a little while because part of what's nice about uninterrupted time is it gives me the chance to get out of mom mode. I'm oh yeah, I'm switching off the mom switch for a little bit. Anyways.
Yeah, it was a nice, and we're going to try to do that regularly too. So we've kind of been planning out how do we want our life to be. We've never been routine people really, but we always, I think,
we're trying to lean into it a little more.
We always try to hit the reset button on that a little bit. And we're always okay, we're going to try this for a little bit. But this is one of those things that I think is really important because we've talked about having expectations.
Yeah.
Being able to say this day in the week, we're going to go and do this and this thing to help our boys have things to look forward to have us have things to look forward to, because
it gives me a mental, I can think about, and I mean, people who do routines know this, but it gives you the space to not worry about the things that you're not getting to because you have time set aside for that. So
one of the things that I think is maybe unspoken about the way that we do our lifestyle, and I love the fact that we do everything from home and I work from home and all of that. But what can happen if you're not careful, if you're not really intentional, what can happen is days start to blur and run together. And if there's ever any difficult seasons, those things can start to dominate, and you're not really leaving your space. And so it can become somewhat depressing. And I think one way to break that up is to give yourself things to look forward to. And that was a season that we were in recently when I just said, I think it would be really helpful for us to just put some things on the calendar that are for us, that they're for our enjoyment, something for us to go, hey, this has not been the best week, but we get a date on Tuesday, or this has been a really rough week of parenting, but we're going to go have a really great time with the kids on Saturday. You know, something like that can really help, I think, to break up what can sometimes become monotony.
Yeah.
So anyways, I wanted to bring up something to you that we did talk a little bit about on our date, and I thought it warranted a better conversation, but there's a trend going on right now, which is interesting to me because the normal TikTok, Facebook trends, those kinds of things, they tend to be more on the feministic side or the liberal side, and the trends are generally more degenerate than what I'm interested in. But there's one going on right now that is called the trad-wife trend. And the trad-wife trend,
not heard that.
So yeah, so the trad-wife trend just means traditional wife, and it is someone this is the basic explanation that they themselves give. So it's someone who likes to wear dresses, leans into the feminine side, is primarily a homemaker, stays at home, cooks and cleans. The husband's the one that works, those kinds of things. That's how they're defining trad wife. And it's making some people mad, but at the same time, I wanted us to talk about it because we've talked about how we're very conservative, we're very biblical in the way that we approach gender roles, but I think even the way we approach gender roles is different than how I hear other conservatives talking about it. So even than the trad wife trend, even than the where I heard about it was Daily Wire shows talking about the trad wife trend. So even their take on the trad wife trend, I think we're a little different than.
Yeah, and so we're kind of different than a lot of people.
Gender roles a little bit,
or maybe not different than a lot of people, but I think with that, the conversations that we've had, we just we would explain things and maybe just go about it differently than what most people would say or do.
Yeah, so for instance, the things that tend to come up when you think about gender roles, first of all, what's the first thing that would pop into your mind? Not your answer, but the first thing that you think most people think of when it's gender roles.
Okay, so conservative wise, people, or I guess not conservative wise either way, because the feminists are trying to be we want to go the other way.
What's the picture?
The picture is
picture?
You picture the 50s housewife, know, and then the husband doing his 8 to 5 job, and then the wife is home and cleans, takes care of the home, is there to just get things ready, kind of the heart of the home, but the home is her responsibility.
Sure.
The food, the cleaning, making sure everything runs smoothly, and then the dad or the father, husband, whatever, is just kind of in charge of making sure there's money, providing for them.
Yeah.
So that's what I think.
Yeah, I think that's how most people think about it. And when you hear conservatives talking about proper gender roles, those are the things they generally bring up. The woman is cooking and cleaning and the man is working. Those are basically the two things.
Even
that
sometimes the woman is more in charge of the children to an extent than the father. He's I'm going to tell your dad, he's the buck stops with him usually, but then there's you don't get this overall picture of a really involved father in the day to day.
And I don't remember who said this. I think it was one of the Daily Wire guys. So Ben Shapiro, Michael Knowles, one of those guys. I really liked this perspective. So yes, they have, I think, a little bit more of a shallow perspective on what gender roles are. And we'll talk a little bit about how we define them in a minute. So anyways, he was saying that as a man, my primary job is also to be a homemaker. It's a woman's job is primarily to be a homemaker, but that's not just a woman thing. It's my first job as well to make sure that the home is made. The children are raised well and are happy and everybody in the home is flourishing.
I like that idea, yeah, because we're a team. We are making our home, and our home isn't just this building or the money that's going into it.
Something you're decorating.
Yeah. And so I really like that idea of we are both homemakers, because we are, as a family. So, but what would you say are the roles for men and women?
Yeah. So like we said, we think about this a little bit differently. And I think my view of gender roles is informed by Scripture, but Scripture doesn't really give us roles, right? Scripture gives us, I think, a general job description of how a husband...
I feel like that might be something that people take issue with, is that you said.
No, it doesn't, though. It says what? It says, husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church. That's not very specific, right? And then it says, what? Wives, submit to your husband as to the Lord. That's also not very specific. There's a huge range of things that can happen inside of those things. Right. And I think one of the problems is that we've reduced gender roles to the kind of like this division of labor concept instead of more of a celebrating strengths concept. And every different couple is going to have different strengths in different areas. I think there are a few things that are specific to men and a few things that are specific to women in general, that those things should always be celebrated, and those should always be kind of set out as this is the man's responsibility and this is the woman's responsibility. But when it comes to things like cooking, cleaning, all of those division of labor type things, who raises the children, who does the schooling, you could go on and on and on, who does the dishes, who handles the finance, who does the working. I think a lot of those things just come down to how your specific couple makeup is, and what your strengths are, and how can we celebrate those strengths inside of this marriage relationship.
I like that idea of celebrating strengths and supporting each other through weaknesses, or we go through seasons, and there's seasons where I can't do certain things very well or whatever, and so you pick up the slack. And so working together rather than just being like, women do these things specifically. This, I'm not going to step into this. This is her domain. This is my domain. We have our different areas,
Yeah. I don't think that's a helpful way to think about it. And we've brought this up before, maybe on this podcast, but about the marriage is not 50-50. It's, today I have 80 and you have 20. And so we're going to, maybe we both have 40 and we pray for the other 20. It's like marriage is not it's not a equal division of labor proposition. And like, I've been sick the last couple of days and you've been pulling a lot more of the slack, because I just haven't felt very good. And so it goes in cycles. But I do think when it comes to gender roles, there are certain things that are true of most men and that are true of most women because of the way God designed us. And so I think in general, when it comes to gender roles, there's three things that I really think should apply almost universally. And the reason I'm using terms like almost or should, or because I recognize there are some really outlier situations. I brought up one to you about a disabled man, for instance. I think a disabled man can still, like, let's say he can't work outside the home and he doesn't have a way to produce income. I think he still can be the man in the relationship. And I think reducing the gender role down to he has to be the one who works and gets the income, that really takes away from that particular case's ability and to be that, to be a full man in the relationship. And I think it's a shallow definition. Yeah. So here's some things that I think are backed by scripture that are less shallow. I think men should shield and women should ballast. And the way that I look at both of those things, you hear the shielding more as like men are the protector. But the reason I don't like,
a lot of times women, when you hear about men being the protector, automatically in other women it's like, am I not strong enough? I'm weaker. I have to be protected. I can't do certain things that men do. And we're not talking about ability or capability right here. So
and honestly, the reason I don't like the word protection is because it almost exclusively brings up physical protection as like the only one. And I think primarily, there's very few times in your life, depending on where you live, but there's very few times in your life when physical protection is even going to be necessary. And so for it to be like men are supposed to be physically protectors of their family, if that's all that means, like that's like we're ready for a day that may never come, But I think protection, if you change that term to be more like a shield, the way I look at it is, so like imagine you're a boat. Right. So the husband is kind of like the top part of the boat and the wife is like below the deck. And so the husband's taking all the punishment. Right. My job, I think, as a man in the relationship is to take the punishment and to go, if there's anything coming at our family, I'm the first one out and I'm going to handle it. So if that's an uncomfortable conversation, if that's someone on our podcast leaving a negative comment, whatever it is that could potentially threaten our family or our emotions or our children, anything, I'm supposed to be the one that's there, like
spiritually
taking
too.
it.
Yeah, spiritually, I think you're going to bat for us too. Like you're spiritually kind of the spiritual protector, as in like, there was something that happened the other day. It was like, I feel like we were kind of being attacked. And so you kind of took charge and we're like, we're going to do some things to really make sure that we're in that spiritual warfare mindset. And so I think that that's another aspect of it.
Absolutely. And I think that there's psychology and biology for all of these that I'm about to mention that lend itself, again, in God's design, that lend itself towards men being that punishment taking type of role. It's not just that we should do it. It's like we were made for it. Like I tell you all the time, it's not fun unless somebody's getting hurt a little bit. Like the pain is part of what makes it fun. We're kind of built that way. We're built to like want to take some punishment. And that's really helpful because when punishment is necessary, we are not afraid of it. We can go and I can take it. Like, especially when we're talking about emotional punishment, I can take all the emotional punishment, you know, and quite frankly, you're not as able to take as much emotional punishment. And that's our relationship, right? That's not, I'm not saying that's every single man and not every single woman.
Yeah, I know some women
that's how it plays out in our relationship.
Emotionally, like super tough.
Sure. And that's fine. But their men need to shield them in other ways. Yeah. And there are going to be weaknesses. And so my view of my role, first and foremost, is I'm shielding where there's weaknesses. And I'm making sure that I'm shoring those up. Now, on the other side of that, women are ballast. And I chose that word instead of support because I feel like, what does support bring up in your mind?
Support, it kind of makes it seem like there's a backseat.
That's the way I'm looking at it. So support to me looks more at the he's in charge and I'm the rah-rah cheerleading section. You know, it's like, but if you think about a support, so like in a building, for instance, or if you use the boat again, like the mast underneath the sail, the ballast of whatever it is, like that is something that's strong and permanent and it's holding everything together. And so while the husband is taking all the punishment, the wife, in the very similar way, is taking like that blessing of being shielded and using it to kind of strengthen all of the underneath. And so I think women are specifically much better at putting down roots. Women are much better. We talked about the nurturing side of things. They're much better at creating the environment for depth to take place. And so whenever I'm out there taking all the punishment, you're making sure that shielding doesn't go to waste, right? Yeah. And so I look at it like women are the ballast. Women are they're made to be a support. And I get this idea partly from Genesis 2:18, and I heard this week, and I really liked it. The term that gets translated helper or helpmeet or helpmate, it's really more accurately translated helper against. And the idea is it's something that pushes back. It's something that like a support, right? So like the reason a support works is because it's pushing back against this so that it doesn't fall over. And that's the way I think about like women in a marriage relationship. As the man's out here, he's on top taking all of the punishment and the deck's getting hit and the woman's just making sure he doesn't fall over.
Right.
You know,
I think what's helpful for some of this, so when we take into account some of these things that we're talking about and trying to share more of a in-depth look at some of the, like, not just the surface level, how this might work, but going a little deeper. But it makes me think about some of the struggles I had earlier on in our marriage, and when we were working through some of this, and I was like, it wasn't that I was like raised to be a doormat. So a lot of people in conservative circles, they're like, women are doormats and they're not, being taken care of, or they're not being free enough, or, they're being put into a box. And so it wasn't any of those things, but I think I just have one of those personalities that's more tending like, yeah, I should be doing this list of things that women are supposed to be good at, or, if we're not doing these things, then I'm like failing my job. And so I think some of what this has freed me up to do is to be like, we have different strengths and weaknesses, and we're going to work together to have a healthy family. And then the spiritual aspect of like God has given the husband and the father some specific things for the family, and he's given the wife and the mother some specific things. And so working in the family unit, it's also going to look a little different than if we were just talking, about gender. If we were just talking about what men can do and what women can do, I think that's also a different conversation. But just the way that we've talked about this has freed, me up in my heart and my mind. Something that you kind of helped me open my eyes to was that women don't have lesser value than men, because sometimes when you're reading the Bible and you have more of a surface understanding of these things, you can be like, I feel a little left out. Like I feel a little bit like Lord, like I'm over here. And so just helping to kind of bridge some of those, maybe those gaps, or to be able to see like the glory of a woman, and how men are supposed to like lift her up and things. So it's been cool.
And again, I think the language is really important, because if you change your language from protect and support to shield and ballast, or something similar to that.
And changing the language is important because it's such a hot topic. Not that those words can't mean good things or can't mean what we're saying too, but because of the conversation that's going on, we want to be specific with the words.
And like you said, those words conjure up wrong images, and so you have to explain them.
Yeah.
And shield and ballast, I think, are at least closer to, I think, what God's intent in the design was. Again, men taking the punishment, women being kind of like the foundation that's holding everything together, holding the man up so he can take the punishment. And not reversing that, because to me it would be really cruel for me to be like, I'm gonna hold you up, you go take care, you take all the punishment. That would be out of order.
Right.
It just seems that way,
like
to
against
me, right?
nature.
It just doesn't seem right for a man to go, you go take care of this, and I'm gonna have your back on it.
Yeah. Well, it's like, okay, so one of my favorite things is the John Piper conversation where he talks about, there's a woman and she has a black belt, and she and her husband are walking down, and they're about to get mugged or whatever. And the husband knows she could take care of those guys, but just because he knows she can doesn't mean he's gonna like, all right, I got your back. Like it's just in a man, like he's going to go in front of her, and then, he might get wiped out, and then she'll come, take care of it. But anyways, I just kind of liked that it's innate for a man to want to step up in that way.
And that's kind of the whole point. And I think what our culture is denying so much lately is the fact that it isn't
right.
innate.
Or that it makes women weak because a man wants to be that way.
Well, and I think the reason why you have trad wives is because women are realizing that they're less happy pursuing other lifestyles than they were when they pursued a traditional lifestyle. And I think the reason why that is because of some of these things, not necessarily the outward surface level things that they're showing us. I think what they're really doing is they're leaning back into more of some of these things that we're talking about. Maybe they don't even realize it because they're on that surface of like, well, I'm staying home and cooking and cleaning and taking care of the kids, and he's working and bringing home the bacon.
There's such a harmony. Like there's a conversation that needs to happen between husband and wife, but there's just such a harmony and such there's a freeing up of like being able to operate in some of those God-given innate things when you can when you can bring some of these things that we talked about into the relationships.
Yeah. I said there was 3 things. They kind of all go together, so we won't talk about these other 2 nearly as much because they're very similar. But I think the other like 2 distinctions that I would put in this belongs to men and this belongs to women, mostly because of how we're designed, is men are more of vision casters, and I think women are the ones who guide the vision. And what I mean by that is, even if you look at the biology, and we've talked about this when we were talking a little bit about the way that a woman's cycle goes towards motivation but then kind of backs off, and how you like, and I was like, guys are like that all the time. Like we have that peak motivation all the time.
You're always resetting every day.
It comes from testosterone, right? So like that's your energy and your drive and your motivation, and you're like, go get stuff done. And so like, particularly for my brain especially, I'm always thinking out in advance of like what can we be doing to like tweak this and make this better, and then how can I now communicate that in a way that's compelling so that people get behind me. But I think what your strength is, and what you're very, very good at in our family dynamic, is taking hold of that vision, and then once you understand it, actually bringing it to fruition, but in a way that maybe I wouldn't have considered, because I'm on to the next vision, and you're going deep, right? Yeah. You're looking at it and going, how does this vision that you've cast for our family actually work inside of the family dynamic, and how do I bring that to its proper end inside of the family unit?
I like that, what you said, because what it's doing is it's bringing to mind like some things in our family where maybe I've had some vision and I've had some things that I'm like, I really want to see this in our family. Mm-hmm. And I've kind of like, I've maybe communicated some of that to you and tried to kind of work towards it. And it can happen on a small scale, but what I've noticed is when you carry the vision, it changes the family. Like we need you driving that ship, because it's totally different, you know, when we're both there, when we're both on board, but also when you're like, I want our family to be going this direction. It's totally different. Like, I don't know how else to describe it, but it's been cool to see when you do implement that vision, how it affects our family.
And another way you could look at guiding the vision for a woman is kind of what you said. Like, you have a vision for where you want the family to go. So this is not to say that women don't, right, but you have that vision and you bring it to me, and then since I love you and I care about you and I care about your opinion, I'll take that into account, and maybe not always at first, but it kind of ends up, and it's happened multiple times in our marriage, where it could be a long time before it comes back up, or it could be a short time, but then it'll come back, and I'll be like, okay, I've realized that this is actually right. Yeah. And then I'll bring my drive to it. Yeah. And now we're in go mode. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I think that's the way God kind of designed it to happen. Like, men are supposed to be driving things forward, but women are making sure that it doesn't all fall to pieces, because I'm only ever driving forward. So if I was driving forward all the time, the wagon wheels would fall off. And so I think sometimes women are there going, well, you need to steer also. Yeah. You know, you can't just push the gas. Yeah. And so the last one, it goes very well with this, is I think men have the plan for provision. I don't think that men are to be the providers in the way that our culture has said men have to be the providers. But I think men are the ones who need to take the lead in making sure the family is provided for. But then I think women make the provision mean something. And so what I mean by that is, again, we come back to that whole, like, what if you're disabled and you can't physically go produce an income for your family or whatever? And
today's, like, I've seen so many things where a woman has been blessed with like her online business. And so oftentimes it's like, I was able to bring my husband home from work and now we're doing this business together. Yeah. And like, that doesn't mean that the husband didn't do his job providing for his family.
Absolutely not. And I think that it's still on that man to kind of lead where that provision comes from. So it's like, if that woman, for instance, has a very successful business and there are some critical needs that are not being met in the family financially, that is still on the man to make sure that happens, because he's supposed to have the plan. Like, he's supposed to make sure that the bills are getting paid and that your lights are staying on. And like, even if it's actually the woman who's pressing the button and paying for it, like, to me, it's my responsibility as a man to make sure that the things that are needing to be provided for are taken care of. But it's your job, I think, as a woman, to make sure that provision actually means something. And so even if I am the one, and in most marriages is going to be this way, although we're definitely seeing a lot more where there's both and, you know, there's a lot of both having to work or both choosing to work. But in ones where it's just the man that's going out and working, what I often tell people is, your full-time job that doesn't pay you is worth more to me than you working outside of the home, because the things that you're doing here are things that, one, would cost me a lot to get replicated, and you're doing them better than I could get anybody else to do them if I was paying them. Things like childcare, you know, things like nurturing our children, schooling, all of those things I think are happening better here than they would be happening if we were to outsource them. And it's saving us a lot of money that in that way. So there's double value, I think, in the job that you're doing here at home. And so you're making all of my work actually mean something. So when I bring home, you know, food to put on the table, or when I bring home enough money to pay our light bill, you're making that food and the lights actually create the space for a family to take place, you know. You're making sure that, well, here's a good example. You really pushed for us to do meals at a table, and that wasn't normal for me. Like I grew up on a bus, and we all sat around with our plates on our laps, and we watched a TV show while we ate. That was our ritual.
And just for the sake of your family, you guys, you know, we're always together. So like I always talk about like, I want to connect over dinner. And there were other times that you guys were connecting too. So just to throw that in there, it didn't mean that you were never connecting as a family.
It totally worked for our family, but that was one way that
it just was something I wanted. Yeah.
So I think that's how my mom provided or made the provision count for us, because those times were special for us still, but that's not what was special to you. So you made my food provision count by steering that direction. And so I think that's just an example of how that can interplay together. And so I don't know, do you agree with those? Am I missing something?
No, I don't think you're missing anything, but I do I wonder we might not add this in or not, I don't know, but just how like scripture is informing some of these things that we have, because we've talked some about maybe not necessarily philosophy, but how we think that you can go to a deeper level than just kind of surface level gender roles. This is how it plays out. And so might be interesting to share some of like what scripture has informed that in us. And I'm trying to think through some in my head, but I'm not coming. I'm not.
So I think a lot of times the same arguments that get applied to gender roles from scripture would work for all of these. So things like, how does Christ love the church? He loves by, you know, taking our punishment, by making sure that we're provided for, by casting vision for us so that we have hope in a future. Like, I think all of those things, they generally tend to get applied towards more surface level things. Yeah. But then the same thing for like, how do wives love their husbands
and submit? Like we do believe in submission. But it just plays out.
So again, the word submission gets so abused and so messed up that I think if you apply this filter to it, so like women are ballasting, they're pressing against their husband to make sure that he doesn't fall over. If you look at it as women are taking the vision that is being driven forward and they're guiding it and making it actually take a life of its own inside of the family. And if you look at it as women are making the provision of the family actually turn into a home, those things don't sound like submission. Yeah. Right? Those things don't sound like what pops into your head when you submission.
Hear it, like you need to submit to your husband.
Yeah.
You know?
And so I get that it's a biblical word, and I just think our culture has hijacked the word. It's unfortunate, but I think we need to add language to it so that we can unhijack the word.
Yeah, or paint this picture of a beautiful relationship, because I think we hear submit and we leave out some of these other things. Whereas if you have a relationship that's working together like this, I'll keep using this word, but it's very freeing. And I don't think our culture sees that.
No, because we've denied the fact that men and women are complementary to each other. Yeah. That there is some actual design that God has put in men and women to make them different in complementary ways. Yeah. And I think this is just my attempt at putting language to how I'm harnessing that design and looking at it like through the lens of scripture, and then also the lens of biology, and also the lens of how it's worked out in our own marriage, and going, okay, I think this is a healthy way to view gender roles, much healthier than, well, I'm the man, so I'm not doing the dishes, or I'm the man, even like, so I'm not watching the kids tonight.
Yeah. You know? Or like there being something like, we have so much more conversation about things that we might not see eye to eye on. And there's not this like forcing of your opinion necessarily, you know, like we're going to work together and find find how we can like work that out. And this idea of submitting being like, I have the final say over something. I think that's kind of an also this assumption where you hear submit is that there's like not freedom.
And that whole like final say thing, that I love how that just always comes up when somebody tries to define what the word submission means. The word submission, whenever you hear any pastor, it almost always gets to, well, that means the man has the final say. It's almost like they're trying to preserve that final say authority. And I don't necessarily disagree with it, but I just think, again, that language is harmful to how we think about what that interplay actually is.
Right. Like there's so many other things that need to go into just like you had the final say for our family. There's so many other things going on just behind that.
Well, and also it's like, I don't know that either of us have a quote unquote final say, because the way that it works out in our marriage is that we don't generally make decisions until we're both on board with the decisions. So what I have always said is, if you're in any leadership position and you have to make a final say that people disagree with, you've done a really bad job in leadership of getting people on board with the vision. That there are some things, like when you're like in corporations or things where you have to make decisions for the good of the company. But when you're talking about a family and it's just you and me on this team and there's no other people to consult, if we can't come to an agreement about something, one, it probably doesn't need to happen right now. And two, I'm doing a really bad job of communicating to you the reason why I think it's so important that we need to go this direction.
Honestly, if there's that much disagreement, then there needs to be like a lot of prayer on both parts, because we should be able to come together. And I'm not saying that there's not things that we're gonna like. There might be things that we do that maybe I wasn't as on board with, or things that we decide that you weren't as on board with, but we're gonna be able to figure out a way to come together on it.
We disagree, but I still think that we've never had a quote unquote fight. Yeah. And I think the reason why is because we have this approach to it. It's like, we're just gonna maybe work through things.
Like when we were younger, there were some things, I think, like we didn't have this as fleshed out, and so there were some things that going back we would do differently, but there's more conversation, we're more mature.
I just think the idea that a husband and wife have to fight, I actually heard that somebody said, oh, fighting is a must, you have to fight.
Like, well, define what you mean by fight.
Well, she did, and I disagreed, because it's like the fighting is this conflict that is like full of passion. It's like, no, it doesn't need to be that way. It needs to be, okay, this is really important to you, which means me as a leader in this relationship, I've got to go, this is really important and I'm not seeing it. And so I must need to take a step back and figure this out.
Yeah. Or sometimes there's something.
Revisit this sometime.
Yeah. Like sometimes we need time. Like there have been things that I brought to you or you brought to me, and we've like, hey, I can't do this right now. Like I need some time to think about this, and then we can come back to it, and just having the grace to be like, okay, like I'm going to give you that time. Yep. So
it just comes down to humility.
Yeah.
Just be humble. With that, we're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back. All right, we are back and we're going to do some tough questions. Okay. And so I looked online. There's a Buzzfeed article where they asked 117,000 people some tough parenting questions. And so I was going to read some of these questions to you, and then I wanted you to guess how many people thought a certain thing about them, and then we'll tell you what we think about them. Probably try to keep these a little short and punchy. Some of these are pretty big topics, so they deserve their own episode, but we'll give our brief idea. All right, so the first one, right out the gate. Is spanking a good idea? Ooh. How many of those 117,000 people did you say, or do you think said no?
I think probably a lot of them in this modern day and age are going to say no. Like gentle parenting's a big movement. Even in conservative circles, there's been like a big step away from any kind of physical correction. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to say no, a big no.
This one surprised me. It was 50-50.
Okay, wow. I am surprised by
Half of people still think it's a good idea. Okay.
It's funny because I'm like, regardless of it's a good idea, you need to know if you think it's a biblical idea.
Sure. Well, and I think we have a little bit of a different approach to spanking as well, because I don't remember the last time that I've spanked any of my older children. And when I spank my little children, it almost is like painless. It's almost like it's just like hey, I need you to be paying attention to the fact that wasn't okay.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, you really have to define spanking, and I'm sure that there's a lot that people will bring to mind when they hear that word. But
I mean, when I was little, I got belts on the butt.
I will say
hard.
Discipline should always be done out of love.
Yes.
And there should always be reconciliation, and you're doing it for the good of your child. But
absolutely.
Anyways, but discipline should never be done out of frustration or anger. You should always be calm, and should be out of love.
Yeah. So. And I think it's really, if you are loving your children well, you're going to do that properly. I only remember 2 spankings that I got, and I think I deserved both of them. But the thing about it is, I remember them. And so there might be something to say for like the imprinting on an older child of like, hey, this is a really important, like very vital moment that you need to lock it. What is that term? Like, what is
I'm not sure what you're trying to say.
The moments that are like foundational moments.
Oh, yeah.
What do they call those?
Oh, man.
It's not watershed.
No.
That's a different term, but like it's
I know what you're saying.
Core memory.
Yeah.
So like it ended up being like a core memory for me, like those 2 times. One time my grandpa heard me back talk my grandma, and he was watching me, and like my parents were gone. I think they were having my sister, actually. Like I think that was when Abby was being born.
Okay.
And they were watching us, and Abby took a long time, so they were watching us for like 2 weeks. And I think I probably had talked back to my grandma one too many times. And I don't remember, I was however old I was when Abby was being born, not more than 10. Anyways, he unwound a wire hanger while I watched.
That's such that culture, like that.
And blistered me with it.
Oh,
and
no.
It hurts so bad.
Oh, no.
I can still feel that one. So it's core
maybe
memory.
Maybe not the best.
It's a core memory. That's something I would never do to my kid. I think that crossed the line.
That's extreme.
I think he was frustrated when he did it, and so like I think that one crossed the line.
Yeah, and I think too, like, we've talked a lot about how discipline should be, maybe when you have 1 or 2 kids, you're like, this is the best way to do everything. But the more kids you have, the more you see they're all different, and you really want to get to their heart. Like, you're trying to build a relationship and a connection to their heart, and you're trying to guide them and nurture them in the Lord. And so knowing what's going to help them realize like the folly of their ways versus like, I'm upset and I never want you to do that again. Like there's a difference. So
definitely. That's really good.
Thank you.
So should you share photos of your kids online? How many said no?
Oh, I think this one's going to be split too. Actually, I think this will be split. I think it would lean a little heavier. People say you shouldn't share them. But I don't think it's going to be like one really.
Only 14% said never.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. So most people in our society are totally cool with sharing photos of kids online. And obviously we have to. Do you have reservations about that at all?
I didn't used to. I do now. I do now. When your privacy has been breached, or you maybe feel like there's something that's not very safe and you're kind of concerned about people using things and twisting things, then I think that there's this natural desire to like want to protect a little more. So like, I can definitely understand why people don't want to. And I've actually gone kind of back and forth on it where I'm like, I don't want the whole world to be able to see everything about my family. And so I do like, have like a private account and things like that. So
yeah, I think the only thing I'll say on it is I don't think it's exploitation to do.
Yeah, I would say a lot of people are like, you should only do that if you have your kids' permission, and so I think that's.
I don't
funny.
need my kids' permission for squat.
With their parents. So, anyways, yeah.
When should you give your child their first phone? 52% of people said when.
goodness, when they're driving?
It's a pretty good guess. It's earlier than that.
Okay. 13?
High school.
High school? Okay.
So most people said high school. What do you think?
My kids are not getting a smartphone until they're an adult and they want to pay for it themselves. But also till they.
What about my kids?
Or, you know, we haven't had that conversation.
I know we haven't. That's why I thought it'd be interesting to have it here.
Yeah. I think, when my kids are driving, or even like, when we need a way to contact them, like I'm not opposed to a phone that can get calls and texts, you know, that kind of a thing. When they're entering teenage years, or, you know, in the higher teenage years is probably but a smartphone, you know, I don't want them to have social media, really. I don't want them to be involved on that, but we have had conversations about wanting them to be tech savvy, and we want them to, be able to eventually, like, they're so creative, you know, to share some of their stuff on YouTube and things. But I just want to be really, really intentional about how they're interacting with social media, and having good safeguards in place. Not that we can protect them from everything, but helping them know how to handle technology safely. So,
yeah, I think my answer is very simple. Just in general, I would give my child a cell phone when they demonstrate the responsibility to be able to handle the responsibility of a cell phone.
Yeah.
And I think most parents give their children a cell phone when they think it would be cool to give their children a cell phone.
Or when they want one, or
they're just, they immediately demonstrate that they do not have the responsibility to handle a cell phone. So when my children demonstrate to me that they can handle it, and that even goes for the calling, texting one, like that's a big responsibility. You know, when they demonstrate a need and a responsibility level, then
something I like is people have talked about a phone being a tool and not a toy, and I think that's an important distinction. Okay.
Ow. Oh, right in the heart. Mine's more toys sometimes. It is a tool. I use it. Use it well, but it's very fun.
It is fun.
I feel a little hypocritical talking about this. All right, so this one I just threw this one in here because, one, I thought it'd be an interesting conversation, and we actually brought it up on our date. Is underage drinking okay? This one surprised me. How many people think that it's okay with supervision in the home?
I think at least 60% say it's okay with supervision in the home.
It's less than that, but it's higher than I thought.
Okay.
So it's
40?
It's 25%.
40, 30? I don't know.
Maybe I'm just optimistic, but I was just surprised that people thought, yeah, it's totally fine to give your kids alcohol as long as they're in the house. Like,
yeah.
I guess I understand if you're talking about like parents who want to make sure they're controlling things, but like, what if that was like illegal drugs? Like, are you going to introduce them to illegal drugs inside of your house? Where do you draw that line?
I know. Well, one, I think different families have different lines, and I think it depends on what you're handling. If you are a family that chooses to consume alcohol, like as a couple, adults, and you want your child to have a safe relationship with that, then you're going to maybe show them, like we talked about, like with the cell phone, like you want them to be able to handle that responsibly. And so anything I think that you want your child to have a good relationship with and to understand, there's going to be like slow introduction, like as they continue maturing and getting older, just giving them what they can handle at the right maturity level. So I don't know. I'm not saying like a specific age, or like you start at 6 and then 8, it's like there's not any of that, but I can understand families who are wanting to share that responsibly.
And we're a little bit of a unicorn too, in that we're an alcohol-free household.
And I want to be that way.
I don't feel like I need to introduce my children to alcohol at all.
And we'll have conversations about it, and we know people who do.
Most people we know
I don't think badly of parents who are introducing it earlier to their kids, because I think for the most part they're trying to do it in a responsible way to help their child be able to have a healthy relationship with it.
Yeah. I another core memory, and I guess this is just grandparents episode, but I remember my first taste of alcohol was very unexpected. My grandma got a bottle of red wine, and decided that instead of keeping it in a bottle, she was going to put it in a cherry Coke container in the back of her fridge. So me and all my siblings, we're outside playing, and we come inside. I don't know where the adults were. They weren't around. And I was just like, you know what? I'm thirsty. What's Grandma got in the fridge? Never did that again. Never just go into Grandma's fridge and grab stuff. But I was young, didn't know anything. I was like, oh, she's got cherry Coke. Yay. So first of all, I poured it. I was like, well, this is really flat. There's no bubbles.
No bubbles.
I was like, oh, well, it's just going to be flat. And I think my brother took a drink first, and he was like, ew. And then I took a drink. I literally spit it out. I was like, this is disgusting. And
the worst cherry Coke.
Like, this is the worst cherry Coke ever. And I think we dumped the whole bottle out. This has gone bad. It's rancid. It's like, sorry, no. Grandma, your red wine is gone.
Oh man.
That was disgusting.
Yeah.
So I
that was your first.
I already had a
bad
predisposition against
like
alcohol in general. We've talked about this one too, but how many people do you think are okay with the cry it out method?
I feel like I'm failing at all these statistics. So.
Well, they were mostly surprising to me. That's why I was like, oh, I wonder what you would think.
Cry it out used to be like the super popular, like the main way that people were like, this is how you get your baby to sleep. And I feel like it's not necessarily as popular as it used to be, but I still think that it's very used. So I don't know. I'm gonna say 40%.
Oh, you're close. It's 54.
Okay.
So half of people still think, but
okay.
But what surprised me was 22% tried it and quit.
That doesn't surprise me. I've seen a lot of that. People are like, this did not work for me.
Yeah. Well, and that was one of the things when we first got married that you were just like, no, we're not doing
this. Yeah.
Yeah. And you had a reason that I hadn't heard before though.
Well, I think I had many reasons.
That was mostly so.
Which one are you referring to?
The reason that I'm mostly referring to is the one that is most in line with your overall character, because it was the recurring theme of the early years of our marriage, because I lacked this character quality.
Okay. Well, wanting to always be there for my kids. Like I'm never gonna leave my kid to figure something out without being there with them and helping them through it.
I was referring to kindness.
Kindness. Okay. Yeah. Like
the way you
babies
talked about
are people too.
Yeah. The way you talked about it was I'm being kind to my child by
not
responding to
them.
Their needs.
Yeah.
And I struggled with kindness when I was
well, it can be, we were thrown into parenting, pretty hard. I had a cesarean, we had newborn twins, and I never had babies before. So like, the first couple of months, there was pressure to do cry it out. And I was also just trying to figure out, like how to take care of two babies at a time. So that was hard. But trying to be like, figure out routines and rhythms, and we were tired, we were sleep deprived, but I just was so determined. I was like, this is just so against my heart towards my kids, and so interesting.
All right, so we're probably not going to talk about this one very much because we had basically part of an episode about this, but how many people said no way to home birth?
70%.
Oh, wow. 64.
64. Okay.
64% of those 117,000 people would not even give it a chance.
Yeah. No, not consider it.
Not even a little bit.
Yeah. I think people are still really afraid of childbirth.
Of normal childbirth?
Yeah. I think they are. I think they're so, so there's so much fear around it from both the man and the woman, know, so it doesn't surprise me.
It's, I mean, you could just tell by the circles that, I mean, we don't run in very many circles where there's a ton of people who are like us, because, in our church and things like that, like most everybody's having babies the way that most everybody has babies.
Right. Like you go to the hospital, you see a doctor.
Especially for your first couple.
Yeah.
Like, especially like well, I'm at the point now where like my dad delivered one at home because he'd had so many he was bored. I delivered one in the bathroom because I'd had so many I was bored. So You know, we're all over this home birth thing.
The reason you did it was because you were bored.
Exactly. All right, we're gonna move on from that. So this is the last one. How many kids is ideal?
That's funny. What did most people say?
What did most people say?
I think people still say 2 is ideal.
50% say 2.
Okay.
How many think said 3 or more?
Well, you gave me 50% say 2.
Well, some people said 1.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Oh, wow. Okay. 20% said 1.
Yeah, well, 14.
14.
Yeah.
Okay.
So most people still think
that's
2.
a little disheartening to me. Like, come on, America.
I was actually surprised that there wasn't more people on 1 or 2 because like 3 or more, 36%. Like, I was actually a little encouraged. I was like, oh, okay, cool. Yeah,
we got some more.
We're in the slight minority.
Yeah.
Not the major minority.
That's true.
But then I also looked at a poll right under that, which was how many people think that the Duggars are absolutely crazy, and it was the vast majority. It was well over 60%.
20 kids. That's a lot of kids.
That's a lot.
It is.
I might have voted for the Duggars are absolutely crazy. It was like 20% was like, who's the Duggars? So we're gonna take a quick break, and we're back drafting morning routines. We are back, and we have a fun little experiment. We're gonna try this. I don't know if it's gonna work.
I don't know.
We're gonna try it.
I might totally do a terrible job drafting.
It's fine. We're gonna draft our ideal morning routine with a twist. If I take something, you can't have it. If you take something, I can't have it. So think wisely. What are the 3 things that you must have in your morning routine before I take it from you? So I'm gonna let you go first, because ladies first.
Okay. All right.
I know what you're going to take, and I'm going to be mad.
Okay.
It's the clear 101.
The morning drink.
Any morning drink. So I lumped in coffee.
Any drink. Morning drink.
You have to have a morning drink.
Yeah.
Coffee. So we have Early Bird, which is like a supplement type drink that wakes you up in the morning. It's got green caffeine in it, no crash. I drink it every single day.
It has minerals. It is. It's really good.
And you always make yourself a coffee almost every day.
Yeah, with like adaptogens and collagen. Yeah.
Yeah, I knew you were going to. You're the drink person. You had to do it.
Yeah.
If I had gone first, honestly, I would have taken
getting up in the morning with no yummy drink, I would just be so depressed. I want to go back to bed.
Yeah, so for me, I have to play the game a little bit, because I don't think you're going to take one of mine, because you don't. This would be my 101, but I'm not going to take it yet. I'm going to wait. I think my 101, or my pick, not my 101, my pick, I think I just want some quiet in the morning. I think part of my morning routine is I want some time to gather my thoughts.
Yeah, you do so much better when you've had time to yourself. I just don't expect that.
Earlier last year, I started waking up before the kids, and I think one of the best things that I ever did was to do that, because I realized that I was getting so frustrated when they were waking me up. Mm-hmm. So the girls have very inconsistent wake times. It's generally around 7:30,
not
but
very
sometimes
inconsistent, but there will be.
It varies within an hour,
yeah.
So it could be 6:30 or it could be 8. You know, it could be one of those. It's usually 7:30, but it's been tending more towards 7 lately. But what was happening was, during that season especially, they would be getting up, at random times, and I would either have planned to have gotten up or do something, and I never could get up early enough to be able to gather my thoughts, and it was really frustrating me. And so I just decided I'm going to start getting up way earlier than I have ever gotten up before. It's when I started getting the morning drink.
Anybody who knows you, they're like, he's not a morning person. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But then I made the decision, I get to decide if I'm a morning person or not. And so I started doing that, and it's been really, really helpful to have some time to gather my thoughts and clear my head and do
it's
some
kind of funny because
things.
You're a different person in the morning when you wake up before the kids versus when you don't. And so I've even come to be like, I wish you would go get up out of bed so you can get yourself going.
Well, I've heard some conflicting things lately where I also wasn't getting enough sleep. And so I've tried to balance that lately. Over the last month, I've been trying to find that balance between, okay, well, if I was up too late, I probably need to forego. And
you know me, I'm the one that's always being like, are you sure? Are you sure you're getting enough sleep? Because that is another that I'm a big proponent of. You need sleep.
Yep, I do.
So, okay. So I get the next one?
You get the next one.
Okay. I'm going to say like some form of Bible time. So that's what I'm taking.
I'm going to include reading in that. I had it on my list, but just reading of any kind, like some time to like get your head around something educational or inspirational or, you know, get your day started off on the right foot, you know. I will do a form of that. Usually mine's more auditory. I'll listen to a sermon. I'll listen to a podcast, you know, because I've got more time than you do before the kids wake up usually.
Well, when I'm saying Bible time, I'm like, everything I'm saying is like with the kids. You know?
You've
like,
got to do it around a bunch of children.
I'm not in a season of waking up at 6 before the kids. But I want to do that right now. You shouldn't be
because you still have a little baby. So and you're recovering from that. So, all right. So you've got a morning drink and reading. I've got quiet. Both of which your things I can enjoy better.
Yeah.
I'm going to take a shower. I love having a shower in the morning. Yeah. I've almost always been a morning shower person. I know a lot of people like taking a shower at night. I don't like laying down on my bed with my hair wet, though.
That's funny.
And also, when I wake up in the morning after taking a shower, my hair is crazy.
Oh, yeah.
Especially when it's not short, which it isn't right now, which is why I'm wearing a hat. 'Cause I don't like fixing my hair when it gets long because it's long and thin and
they did
receding.
Some weird the last time they cut it. You have like a tuft.
All I have is tufts. I'm a tuft head.
Okay, so you took shower.
I'm going to shower.
Okay.
That's my 101, by the way. Showering is my 101. Okay. I gotta have one.
Yeah, I know. You need your shower in the morning. So I'm going to say set the mood. So something I really like doing in the morning is like that just helps me. So having like my essential oils going, maybe some music or just like a calming, peaceful, happy atmosphere, something to do to like set that stage helps me. Grounds me.
Typically also like will try to engage the children in something similar to Bible time or whatever.
Yeah.
And is that generally when that calming time happens for you? Is there a separate time?
No, usually. So like Bible time is kind of like after breakfast and things like that. And like setting the mood, I really like to, if I'm, you know, just depending on what's going on, I like for things to be calm. And so like, hey, let's listen to this while we're waiting for breakfast and let's get some coloring stuff out. So it can just be like a lot of different things, but.
Gotcha. Yeah. All right. So my last one, I want to go outside. And I've been so sad.
I had a
in
walk
the winter
down there. On there, yeah.
Because the winter has really disrupted my morning routine. Yeah. Part of my morning routine during the summer last year, spring and summer, is I would get up early, and one of the first things that I would do was I would just go outside and I would watch the sunrise, which in the summer you can do because the sun rises really early. Yeah. Now if I get up at my normal time, it's like 5:30, the sun doesn't get up still for like another hour. So I'd be out there in the dark in the cold. Yeah. But in the summertime it was getting up there around 6. And so like 5:30, get downstairs, get my morning drink.
I'm one of those people that's like you can be out in the cold, but it's just different if it
wasn't comfortable. Yeah. So like I just didn't enjoy it.
You miss the warmth. Yeah.
I miss warmth so much. Mm-hmm. And especially in the summer when it's super hot in the daytime, but it's still warm in the morning. It's like the perfect time to go outside. You got all this fresh air. You could watch the sunrise. You could stand in the grass and just like, you know, it just, again, it's all of it together. It's that quiet and the outside and then come inside and take a shower. Yeah. It's like, it's perfect. It's perfect morning. Yeah. I was surprised I didn't have to take this. I thought I was going to steal breakfast from you.
Oh, okay. Well, I didn't even know that was like something you had to draft.
You have to eat breakfast, but like, that's you didn't want to take breakfast, so you don't get to eat tomorrow.
No, that's like a given.
No, it's part of your morning routine. You got to take breakfast. One of us is going to drink and one of us is going to be hungry.
All right, well, good thing I'm getting some extra nutrients in my coffee.
Yeah, I'm the one that doesn't eat breakfast, so it just felt really disingenuous. I did eat this morning. I ate some of the pancakes that we had, so that was good. Couple of like honorable mentions. If I can get like a quick workout in, I found I don't like that as part of my morning routine, but it is helpful. Like it helps me get going in the day.
Yeah, I like doing like some deep breathing and stretching, like not like just like getting some movement and like waking your body up. Yeah.
Yep. And I I put play with kids on the list, but actually I don't want to play with kids in the morning.
First thing in the morning.
It's like for the first 3 hours of the day, I kind of want the kids to just play by themselves. And then I love playing with them, but like in the afternoon.
And you'll do like some books or like the girls, will sit with you. And
I end up having to play with them. but
your energy,
I don't always want to.
Yeah, your energy to like really play and engage comes later.
Yeah. It's like I definitely like have plenty of times throughout the day whenever I can like really engage. And if I've gotten up well before them, I'm much more inclined to make them breakfast and play, and like because I've already had my time the last several days because I've been staying up later. I've been getting up with them, and I've found that I'll get less frustrated if I try to still do some of my morning routine stuff in the midst of them, which is what you do every day. But I've tried to do that more, so it kind of precludes the whole playing with them thing. But there's plenty of time for that later. So anyways, well, that's our show for today. It was a lot of fun. I had some great conversations. We found out that Stephanie doesn't get to eat breakfast tomorrow. I didn't have to blow my nose all that often.
You didn't actually. I'm surprised you didn't have to blow it more.
One time.
Have you been like sniffing secretly?
Blow the trumpet in Zion. We'll see you.